everybody, my name is Mars, you can call me MG if you'd like, and today I have for you the 25 books that I want to read in 2025. This is a tradition that is very popular on BookTube. It's been going on for years and years and years, where whatever the last two digits of the year are, you pick that many books to read the next year. And last year, or I guess technically still this year, in 2024, I put a little spin on it by picking different categories, and I had 6 categories with 4 books each within them, and I'm gonna stick to that. This year there are 5 categories with 5 books each because 5 times 5 is 25, and I did switch up some of the categories and keep others the same, so let's just get into all of that. The first category is the simplest of them, and it is just books that I have on my physical TBR. And my physical TBR right now is somewhere around 30 to 35 books, so not as many as a lot of people on BookTube have, but definitely a lot for me. My physical TBR usually sits somewhere between 15 and 20, so I've got a lot to get through, and these are my highest priority ones, starting with The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. This is a book that's been on my radar for a long time. Like, what year did this come out? Oh, there's a map. 2018, so like 5 or 6 years, because I heard about this quite soon after it came out, I think. And it's high fantasy, it's adult, it's very dark and gruesome, and I just have the highest hopes for this. And it is the first in a trilogy, so it would be starting a new series, but I'm okay with that. I don't mind having a ton of series on the go. Next up is The Magicians by Lev Grossman, and I watched the show when it came out. I've only watched a couple of seasons. I don't think I watched the whole thing, and I know the show and the book are very, very different, but for some reason, these past couple of months, I've just been really wanting to read this, but I haven't been able to fit it in, so I'm making it a priority in 2025. I almost bought a different cover of this in, I think it was August. I found like the regular beautiful green cover in a thrift store or like a used bookstore, and I didn't buy it, and I regretted it. And then a couple of months or a couple of weeks or however long it was later, I found this copy in a different used bookstore, and I was like, I'm not gonna pass it up, even if it's not the cover that I like. I really want to buy this because I really, really, really want to read it. And again, the first book in a trilogy. Didn't mean to do that, but it just is what it is. Then we have a little bit of a change of pace because I have The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton. This is a classic. This is kind of the book that defines the YA genre, or like the origin of the YA genre. And I know a lot of people read this in school, but I never did. And it just sounds really good, and I'm very intrigued. I've never seen the movie, so I like know the gist of it just because it is so popular, but I don't know the actual plot. So I'm very much looking forward to this book. Then we have Frenchman's Creek by Daphne du Maurier. I have read Daphne du Maurier before, but only Rebecca, which I think is probably her most popular one. At least it's the one that I've heard the most people talk about, and I really, really love Rebecca. It's one of my favorite classics. So I found this book in a little free library a couple of months back, and I was like, ooh, yes, please. I would love to try more of her books. I think this one has to do with pirates, so I am curious as to how that's gonna go. And the last book in the general physical TBR category is The Merchant of Venice by William Shakespeare. This is on the list because it is the only William Shakespeare that I own and have not yet read, so I want to put him next to his brothers on the bookshelf. I don't know why my books are now boys and brothers. That's a little bit weird, but yeah, I collect Shakespeare in several different editions. I do have, I think, 2 books in this specific edition, which is the Pelican Shakespeare. I have Titus Andronicus and Julius Caesar, so they're going to look very nice on the shelf next to each other once I actually read this. Moving on to our second category. This category is dark academia books. So a little while ago, I put up a video that was my top 10 most anticipated dark academia books that I want to read, and I have picked 5 books from that list to prioritize in 2025, and I only own one of them physically, and that one is Babel. I'm so excited to get to this. I bought this while I was on vacation visiting my sister in New England, and I actually bought The Poppy War on that same trip, but not from the same bookstore. But I'm going to do a little vlog reading Babel and The Poppy War and maybe Yellowface if I can get it, just trying out R.F. Kuang's writing because I've never read any book by her before, and there are several that I really want to try, so I think it would make a neat little vlog, and I'm very much looking forward to that. Next on that list is A Dark and Drowning Tide, which is a very recent release, and I've heard quite mixed things about it. I've heard some people love it, and I've heard other people hate it. I'm hoping that I'm going to be in the camp of loving it because there are so many aspects to this that I just really think I would enjoy, and I won't get too into it here for this or the other books in the Dark Academia category because I did do that Dark Academia TBR video, so check that out if you want to know more of my thoughts on this, but yes, A Dark and Drowning Tide is the second book in this category. Next up is Anatomy, a Love Story, which has a stunning cover. I'm genuinely obsessed with it, and I was this close to buying both Anatomy and its sequel, which is called Immortality, also a fantastic cover. And it was actually at the bookstore where I ended up buying Babel. I was either going to buy Babel or I was going to buy Anatomy and Immortality. Ultimately, I went with Babel, and I don't like regret that choice at all, but I do wish I could have bought all of them because I just love books, you know? Obviously, that's what this channel is about. But this is a book that ticks so many boxes for me, and I can't wait to get to it. Next on the list in the Dark Academia category is Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo, and I'm thinking that I'm going to do a similar thing with Leigh Bardugo that I want to do with um, R.F. Kuang, where I read a couple of different books from her, because I've never read anything by Leigh Bardugo, and she's got so many books. There's actually like a long list of authors that I want to do this little like taste test vlogs with, but I think it's about time I pick up some Leigh Bardugo. And Ninth House, it's another book that I've heard mixed things about, but I think that for my personal taste, it really could be a hit, so it's one that I'm very excited for. And the last book in this category is A Lesson in Vengeance, which I think is a little bit less popular, less well known than some of the other entries on this list, but it is still one that I've heard a lot of people talking about and I've heard a lot of people love, so I want to give it a shot and hope that I love it too. The third category in my 25 in 2025 is rereads, and specifically, I picked 5 books that I want to reread because I'm unsure about how I'm going to feel about them now and might unhaul them. These are books that some of them I read maybe 3, 4 years ago when they first came out. Some of them I read back in like high school, which was quite a while ago at this point. But they're all ones that I do have good memories about, but I don't know how I would feel about them now with my current reading taste. So I want to give them another shot and see what I really think. And first on that list is Zodiac by Romina Russell. I think she's got a different last name now that she publishes under. It might be Romina Garber. I'm not solid about that though, it might be wrong, but I think so. This is the first book in a 4 book series about the zodiac, and basically there's this solar system where there are 12 different like planets slash planetary systems, and each one is represented by a different zodiac, and then the 13th zodiac, Ophiuchus, is that how that's pronounced? I really don't know. Comes in and ruins things, and our main character is like the princess of the cancer people, I think, and that's why there's a crab in the O. I really don't remember much beyond that, and I never continued the series, so I would like to read this, and if I decide to unhaul it, then I unhaul it. If I enjoy it, then I could continue on with the series. We'll just have to wait and see. In a similar vein, we have Shadow of the Fox by Julie Kagawa. This is actually a signed copy. It came with this little note from the author, and then you can see she signed it. I think I got this at like BJ's or something. I really don't know. But yeah, I read this first book. I enjoyed it. I never continued on with the series, so we're gonna see if I would like to or if I wouldn't. I'm really not sure. I remember this is high fantasy and it follows kitsune, but there's also like a warrior and they're trying to collect pieces of a scroll to summon a dragon. That sounds familiar. I think that's what this is about, but it's the first book in a trilogy, and I'd like to see if the rest of the series is worth reading. And then we have The Witch King by H.E. Edgman, and I remember loving a lot of things about this novel, like the trans rep and the character work and the relationships between the characters. But the thing I didn't love about it was the like world building and plot. So I am going to give this a reread, and this is the one that's probably the most likely for me to unhaul out of these five, even though I did really enjoy a lot of aspects of it. I know it did get a sequel, and then I like wasn't interested in the sequel at the time of it coming out. I think the author also has other books out at this point, and I would like to check those out. But this one was okay as far as I remember. I'm hoping that I love it more on this reread, but I really don't know. I'm very apprehensive about this one. It's kind of scary. Then we have House of Furies by Madeline Rue, and I remember really, really loving this book. It made like my top list of 2020. Is that the year I read this? I really don't remember. Whatever year I read this book in, it was in my like top 5 favorite books of that year. But I never continued on with the series, and I would like to give it a reread to see if I'm still interested to continue on with the series. I have since read another book by Madeline Rue, which was the Critical Role novel, The Nine Eyes of Lucian, and I really enjoyed that one. So I'm hoping that I still love this. It is historical gothic horror with like fantasy elements. I think the devil is a character in this. I don't remember. It's been years, but I'm very excited for this one. And then the last book in the reread category is Beauty Queens by Libba Bray. This is a retelling of The Lord of the Flies, which I have never read. I do actually have it on my TBR shelf though, so maybe if you guys are interested in this, I might do a vlog where I read Lord of the Flies and then I reread this. I think that could be fun. Maybe suggest other retellings of Lord of the Flies that I could read in that kind of vlog. But yeah, it's Lord of the Flies, except the children that are stranded on this island are beauty queens, like beauty pageant queens. And there's queer and trans rep. There's a dictator with a monkey, I think. There's a whole lot of stuff. It's very comedic, very humorous. It's not like dark and depressing like I'm pretty sure Lord of the Flies is. But I do remember loving this, and I've since read more from Libba Bray and absolutely loved it. The Diviners, one of my favorite books of this year. I had a fantastic time. I have another Libba Bray book on my TBR shelf. Like, I want to give a few more reads from this author, but she potentially could be one of my favorite authors of all time, depending on how things go. So, very much looking forward to this. Let me know if you want to see that Lord of the Flies vlog. We have two more categories to go over, and they are similar. The first one I want to talk about is series to finish, and these are series that I only have 1 or 2 books left to read from in order to finish out the series. And then the other category is just series to continue, and these are series where I have 3 or more left in the series. How many times am I going to say series? So I'm not going to try and finish them, but as long as I make progress in those ones, I will consider it checked off. But first, we're going to talk about the series to finish. And first up, we have Fortuna Sworn, which is a series that I considered for a while my like don't think too much about it, just enjoy the ride series because a lot of things just happen. And the first 3 books, I didn't love them, but I had a fun time with them and I was looking forward to continuing on. And then the fourth one was so bad. Like, I'm sorry. I really, really did not enjoy it. I came so close to DNFing it. It was like 900 pages long for absolutely no reason. It really could have been half that length. Um, yeah, there are 2 books left. Book 5 is out. It's been out for a while now, actually. But book 6 comes out in 2025, I think really early on. So I'm gonna stick with it and read the last 2 books, or read the next one and maybe DNF it. I don't know. We'll see if it follows in the same vein as book 4. The ending of book 4 did redeem itself. Not that I'm remembering a lot of details from it because it's been several months, but I do remember liking the end of book 4, so hopefully book 5 is better. But we'll see. 2 more books in the series. I want to finish it up. Then we have the Graceling series by Kristen Couture, and I have owned this book for so long. I think I got it when it first came out, which was 2008. That sounds about right, because I was 10 years old in 2008, and I definitely remember reading this when I was like 10 or 11. So, I own the first 3 books because at first there were only 3 books. There's Graceling, and then there's Fire, which is like a companion novel, and then there's Bitter Blue, which is a like sequel-ish to both books. There's a plane going by. I'm gonna ignore it. I, in the past year, reread Graceling and Fire. I didn't get to my reread of Bitter Blue yet, and that is because the 2 books that came out like a decade after all the rest, Winterkeep and Sea Sparrow. I'm not sure what order they go in, but I'm pretty sure those are the names of the other 2 books that I haven't read. They are like direct sequels to Bitter Blue. It's like they're a trilogy, and then Graceling and Fire are kind of like prequels at this point. Um, but I wanted to reread Bitter Blue closer to when I would be reading those 2 books. So that's gonna happen. So technically I do have 3 books left to finish this series, but Bitter Blue is a reread, so I'm not counting it. There's only 2 books that I have to read for the first time, so that's why the Graceling series is on this list. Then we have the Emily Wilde series. I read Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies back in June or July. It was definitely not the right time of year to be reading it for me in the Northern Hemisphere, but I had an absolute blast with this. I really, really enjoyed it. So I want to read the other 2 books. I think the third one just came out like a month or so ago. So I do have to read books 2 and 3, but I can't wait. I'm so excited to read them. Similarly, we have the Last Binding series, and this is another trilogy where I read the first one, which is A Marvelous Light, back in the summer, and it's got historical elements, it's queer. What more could I ask for, honestly? And I want to pick up the other 2 books. The second book follows, I think, the sister of one of the main characters in the first book, and then the third book follows the like ex-boyfriend of one of the main characters in the first book, which is very interesting to me. I don't know anything else beyond that, but I want to get my hands on these books soon. And then finally, in my series to finish category, we have All Our Hidden Gifts by Caroline O'Donoghue. First of all, look at this stunning cover. I bought this book on recommendation from Jess over at the Hex Library, and she has since read the rest of the series and also really enjoyed them, I think. This is the first book in a trilogy. We follow Maeve, who is in Ireland, I think. And she finds this deck of tarot cards, and chaos ensues. I really enjoyed this first book. I listened to the audiobook while I read it physically, and I think that was definitely the way to go because having that accent, the like actual Irish sounding narrator, really helped me feel grounded in this story. And it was a very fun time. So I'm hoping I can read the other 2 books. I'll probably give this one a reread first, though. So we'll see how things go. And finally, we come to the last category, which is series that I don't have to finish in 2025, but I would like to make progress on. And first up, we have the Wax and Wayne series by Brandon Sanderson. This is the second era of the Mistborn world, where we follow Wax and Wayne. Nope, I got that backwards. Wax and Wayne. And this is a high fantasy with like Western and steampunk elements, and it was just everything that I needed. I loved this book. This and the next 2 books on this list are books that I read in September for the Magical Readathon, and like it was just a great time. The Magical Readathon really did me a solid in giving me some great books to read, and I ate this up. I adored it, and I cannot wait to read the rest. There are 3 books in this series, and honestly, I would read them all back to back if I could, but I thrift my Brandon Sanderson because I really like these mass market paperback sizes for him for some reason, which like I could buy new, but it just feels better to buy them used, you know? So this is the first series in this category. Then we have The Diviners by Libba Bray, which I talked about a little bit when I talked about Beauty Queens, but I read the first book in this 4-book series, absolutely loved it. This takes place in New York in the 1920s, and our characters are diviners, which means they have like supernatural powers. There's like a ghost serial killer, like not someone who kills ghosts, but a ghost that kills people. And the devil might be a character coming up in the series. Also, I love this cover, which has nothing to do with the book itself, but like I think it's beautiful. And like I'm just obsessed with everything about this book, so I really, really, really want to get to the rest of this series. But again, there are 3 books, quite large, and I think the other ones get bigger as it goes, so we'll see if I can get to all of them. I probably won't. Then we have An Ember in the Ashes by Saba Tahir in this new paperback cover, which is one of the most stunning covers I've ever seen in my life. It's so beautiful, and that's why I bought it. It was also only like $16, pretty cheap for books nowadays, but I read this in September, really enjoyed it. Not as much as I enjoyed The Alloy of Law and The Diviners, but definitely I really had a great time with this, and again, this is the first in a 4-book series, so I have 3 more to go. The other ones also have stunning new covers, so I think they're gonna look beautiful on my shelf. The spines like line up to make an image together, which is something I always love, but I am a little bit less excited to get to this than the others, but I'm still very excited to get to the rest of the series. Then our penultimate entry on this list is the Animorphs series by K.A. Applegate. I have read the first 10 out of, I think, 54 books in the series, so I have a long, 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 long way to go. I did do a vlog earlier this year of reading a bunch of Animorphs in one weekend, and I had every intention of doing another one this year, but I didn't. So I'm still at number 10, but we are going to try and make as much progress in the series as we can, because I did enjoy what I've read of it so far. I did not read these books as a kid. This is the first time I'm reading them as a 26-year-old at this point. I think I was like 24 when I started, because it was for the Nostalgia Train book club a while back. Anyway, I am enjoying this. They are fast reads. They're a lot more horrific than you would expect from a children's book, but I am fascinated, and I want to see how it all plays out in the end. And then the last series I have is another long one, and that is the Ice Planet Barbarians series by Ruby Dixon. I have read the first 4, and they're such a fun time. The second one is my favorite. I loved it so much, but there are a million books in this series, and not just this series, because there's other, like, series that, like, tie into it at different times, so I've got a lot of work cut out for me in this one, but I am excited. These are kind of like my palate cleanser books. Whenever I read something that I'm like, okay, I need to turn my brain off for a while, but I still want to read, I turn to Ice Planet Barbarians, because they're silly and fun and indulgent, but there is like a plot to them. There is like a story going on. It's just also silly, fun, and indulgent. So I have a great time with them, and I can't wait to continue on. So finally, we have made it to the end of my 25 in 2025. Let me know if you've read any of these books and what you thought of them, or if they're also on your TBR. Maybe we can do some impromptu buddy reads. But for now, we've come to the end of the video, so if you've enjoyed it, be sure to give it a big thumbs up. You can subscribe to my channel for more content, and that way I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye, everyone!